Welcome to the show, Chris Graham. We're going to talk some UVA basketball. I had promised to do a podcast yesterday, but the day got away from me. And today, Thursday, as I'm recording, we're going to talk about the UVA-UNC matchup. And then I'll go into a couple of columns that I wrote in the last couple of days, when there's a lot of days in between games. And we have another one of those coming up. I think it's after the Duke game. The Duke game is a Saturday game, and then Virginia gets one more midweek break, and we won't play again until the next Saturday, the season finale, regular season finale, home finale with Georgia Tech. So in these weeks, I get to be creative, and it's a lot of fun. Diving into numbers and that kind of thing. But first, let's talk about North Carolina. Okay, so North Carolina, if you're just studying the North Carolina side of this, Carolina's 3-3 in its last six, and two of those losses on the road. Their other game on the road was the win at Miami by 3 points, and Miami's reeling right now, five straight losses. And so this Carolina team is as vulnerable as they're going to be. They were 9-0 to start the ACC season, 12-3 now, but 3-3 in their last six. Only problem is Virginia's also pretty vulnerable right now. This game is Saturday at 4 o'clock. Virginia, of course, as we know, if you're watching this podcast, you know already, two losses in the last three, beaten defensively by Pitt, 74 points in JPJ, first time an ACC opponent had over 70 points in about a million years. The 49-47 win in between those two, the two losses, the other one to Virginia Tech, the 49-47 win over Wake Forest was just atrocious to have to watch. It was a win, and it was fine. And then the 74, what was it? 75-41 loss. I guess I've put that out of the mind there to Virginia Tech on Monday. So this North Carolina team, this year's North Carolina team, is a bad matchup for Virginia. Let's just put it that way. I know Virginia won and ended Carolina's season last year. Surprisingly, Carolina didn't even play in the NIT. Just surrendered an opportunity to play in the postseason after not making the NCAA tournament. And so the loss to the Virginia in the ACC tournament was it for North Carolina last year. And that was, I mean, that Carolina team was a good matchup for Virginia. This is not a good matchup for Virginia. This Carolina team can score in the post. Virginia can't defend the post very well. This Carolina team can shoot from the perimeter. The way Virginia is going to have to defend the post is likely going to be with a lot of post doubles, and this team has not been very good at post doubles. And then don't be fooled by the 71.4 points per game that this Carolina team gives up. That's tempo. When you look at Carolina from a defensive efficiency perspective, the Heels are ranked 10th in KenPom. Virginia's 9th. These are two very good defensive teams. Carolina's just as good. And so this game's going to be played at a Tony Bennett pace. And previous North Carolina teams that have not done well against Tony's Virginia teams have lost those games because they can't play the Tony pace and play it as well as Tony can. And that's one thing you have to like about Tony. There's a lot that you don't like. I know that. I get the emails. If there's one thing you have to like, though, it's that if Tony loses, he loses because the other team beats him playing his game. He doesn't lose playing an up and down the floor game, which is not his style of play. His teams control the pace. This Carolina team can play with Virginia at this pace. So let's look at the Carolina rotation. It's a tight rotation. He'll play 7 or 8 guys. It's just there are 9 or 10 guys that can be those 7 or 8 given on the night in the matchup. But he doesn't use his bench very much. 3 starters average over 30 minutes a game. A fourth averages a tick under 30 minutes a game. The leading scorer, and this backcourt's pretty small. RJ Davis. He's a shooting guard at 6 feet tall, 21.3 points a game, though, and shoots 41% from three. Volume shooter, 16.4 shots a game, and he doesn't leave the floor much. Plays just under 35 minutes a game. The other pure backcourt guy is 6'1" freshman point guard Elliot Cadeau, 7.8 points a game, 4 assists a game. Doesn't shoot well from three, 20.6%. So you don't have to worry about him very much out there. Cormac Ryan, I want to call him a guard as well. Excuse me for the cough. Ryan's name is familiar because he's the Notre Dame transfer. Averages 10.8 per game. His shooting numbers are disappointing. 36.5% from the field, 31.7% from three. And the bench, the top bench guy as a guard is Seth Trimble, 6'3" sophomore. 5.3 points a game. Pretty good shooting numbers. 44.9% from the field, 42.9% from three. The guards are good, and Davis is obviously 21.3 points a game. I think that it's got to lead the ACC. But the post is where this team is strong. Armando Bacot has been around forever. I joked in my preview column on the website, he didn't actually play for Dean Smith, but it just feels that way. He is averaging a double-double this season because that's what he does. 14.6 points per game this year, 10.3 rebounds per game. He's actually taking less shots than he had in the past, deferring to RJ Davis. But when needed, he's been able to put points up on the board. The other starter in the front court, excuse me again, is Harrison Ingram, the Stanford transfer, and his game will remind you of someone else that just recently tore up Virginia, Blake Henson, the Pitt stretch for this Harrison Ingram guy, 6'7", he's 235. So guys like that years ago, and not even many years ago, would have been guys that would have beaten you in the post. They would have, I mean, kind of like Jaden Gardner from Virginia last year, the last couple of years. Led the team in scoring 2 years ago, was second on the team in scoring last year as a big who could hit the mid-range shot and also was pretty strong in the post. This Ingram guy punches it in from three. 40.7% from the three-point line, and with 12.5 points a game. A very similar game again to Henson. Bounce for a big guy. The bench guys in the post are big. 6'10" sophomore Jalen Washington, 4.4 points a game and 8.6 minutes per game. That Washington kid, you might remember, Armando Bacot in the game in Charlottesville last year. It was early January. Got hurt before the first TV timeout, as somewhere 17-minute mark or so, and did not come back. Tweaked an ankle, was not able to come back. The Washington kid came in and played pretty well. Had a big first half, and it took some Virginia defensive strategy at halftime to kind of take him out of the game in the second half. But that kid can put points on the board, as I recall. And then a 6'9" transfer from Louisville, Jalen Withers. Doesn't get a lot of playing time, but again, he's another big guy, big body. If guys get in foul trouble, somebody gets hurt, they've got depth in the front court. So how does Virginia match up? Well, Jordan Minor will get to start. It's just how much will he play? Minor is the reason this season turned around. He only averages 4 points a game, so I'm not, might sound weird to say a guy averaging 4 points a game turned the season around, but it was when he was put in the starting lineup that after the first game, the Virginia lost to Wake Forest down in Winston-Salem. 8-game winning streak was a lot of Jordan Minor and his ability to play defense and not need post doubles to be able to play post guys. And he scored enough. He had 3 double-digit games early. The scoring went down as his stretch run went down. And of late, his minutes have gone back down. He's averaging just 13 minutes a game in the last 4. He had just 8 minutes in the loss against Pitt. He had 13 in the loss the other night to Virginia Tech. If you ask me, that's why in both those games, the post guys went off in terms of their offense, and the rebounding was a big key. As much as the three-point shooting was a big part of that Pitt loss, for example, 14 made threes, 11 offensive rebounds leading to 13 second chance points, also a factor in that loss. And then in the loss at Virginia Tech made 16 layups or dunks out of their 27 total makes. That was point-blank shots, and that was a lot of guys getting around the guys who were in the game for Minor. If we just say it bluntly like that, right? What you fear out of this game, Tony does this, and he's done it since Mike Scott days, so it's not anything new. But if his big gets a foul, in the first half, he takes him out and puts him on the bench for a while. It's just what he does. So an early foul to Jordan Minor is going to mean Blake Buchanan getting in the game, and Buchanan will not be able to physically keep up with Armando Bacot. And if he ends up getting a couple of fouls, I think we saw this in the game at Louisville. Minor ended up with a couple of fouls. Buchanan ended up with a couple of fouls. They ended up having to go to Jake Groves back in the post. He was in the center spot for first couple of months of the season. Didn't play well defensively in that position. It's If Minor gets an early foul, this game unravels. Let's just say it that way. And it's because of the way Tony Bennett coaches it. It's just that's just I'm not criticizing. It's just I'm telling you. I'm not criticizing. I'm just telling you. An early foul to Jordan Minor is going to throw everything off because Buchanan won't be able to guard Baycott one-on-one, and that'll mean Ryan Dunn will have to come over and post double. That'll force the ball out of Baycott's hands, but Carolina can hit the threes that'll be open as a result of that. Um, so I'm not looking forward to Jordan Minor getting his first foul in this game. God forbid. Let's just somehow, if you got whatever powers you got, if you got wishes left over from your birthday, let's all collectively use them. No fouls on Jordan Minor in the first half. Let's give us a chance here. The other big spot is Ryan Dunn, the 6'8" sophomore, defensive player of the year candidate, but he's been getting eaten up on the defensive end lately. For all that ballyhoo. One website I subscribe to, Synergy Sports, gives you the among the many cool things they give you access to numbers wise. You can look and see what a guy gives up defensively in terms of points and shots and attempts from the field, all this stuff. In the last 4 games, Ryan Dunn, now over the season, let's just give you the season number for context. Over the course of the entire season, he's averaging giving up 4.5 points a game, 29.9% shooting. Great numbers. 4.5 points per game, 29.9%. Last 4 games, 9 points a game. So double what he's giving up on the season. And opponents, his guys he's guarding are shooting 52%, 11 of 21 in the last 4 games. That's not quite double, but it's as close as you can get. And he'll be guarding this Ingram kid, the guy who can shoot the threes. And so challenge is out there for our guy, Ryan Dunn. I like Reese Beekman defensively on Davis. No one. I mean, Beekman is the real deal defensively, and he consistently is the guy. I've got him his opponents in the last 4 games. I did the same numbers that I did for Dunn. Beekman's given up 7 points a game, which he gives up 5.7 a game on the season. He guards the point guards. Point guards have the ball in their hands more, and they use the ball more as a result. Everything else. I think his season number is 34.3% shooting. He's holding guys to 13 of 38 in the last 4 games, which is under 33%. Consistently good defensive guy. And it's not like he's going to stop Davis. Davis is going to keep shooting the ball no matter what. He'll make some baskets because he keeps shooting the ball no matter what. But just make it harder, and he will. Beekman will make it harder on Davis to make shots. Force some turnovers. That'll be part of what Beekman does. As much as I just laid out really significant issues on the defensive end, it's the biggest issue is going to be on the offensive end. And it's been this way all season. But, in the 8-game winning streak, Virginia was actually playing pretty good offense. But of late, the only guys meriting any attention are Beekman and Isaac McNeely. The other 3 spots have just been ghosts on offense. Andrew Rohde, I pointed this out. It's in a couple of columns this week, but it'll be worth pointing out, obviously, here on the pod. In his last 11 games, he's averaging 2.8 points a game, shooting 22.2% overall, and 27.6% from 3. I mean, that's a guard. I mean, he was a guy who averaged 17 points a game last year. He's averaging 2.8 in his last 11. You get up to the front court, then the 2 centers, Minor and Buchanan. Both guys who've scored in double digits. Buchanan once this season. Minor, I've got him. I think in my head, I'm saying twice, maybe 3 times, 2 or 3 times. They've got the ability to put double digits up, but in their last 3 games, averaging 6.3 combined points per game on 33.3% shooting. And these are guys, Buchanan thinks he can shoot a mid-range jumper. He can't, but he thinks he can. He just hasn't been able to do so in games. Eventually, that'll translate, but he's not making them. And most of their shots are right around the rim. They're still shooting 33.3%, 8 of 24 in the last 3 games. So Rohde's not doing much. The centers aren't doing much. Let's go to Dunn. His last 7 games, he scored a total of 30 points. This is a kid who's going to be a first-round pick in the NBA draft if he comes out this year. He's averaging 4.3 points per game over a 7-game stretch. He's just 2 of 9 at the line in that stretch. A couple air balls. I mean, 0 of 2 from 3. Those were both air balls. 4.3 points per game from a guy who's giving up 9 on defense in that same stretch. 9 per game and 52% shooting. And then Jake Groves, who had that great stretch, a 4-game stretch from January 31st to February 10th, where he averaged 14.3 points, was 13 of 18 from 3. his last 3 games, that was a 4-game stretch now. The last 3 games, he's averaging 3 points per game, 3 of 9 shooting. So he's shooting the ball 3 times a game. In the previous 4 games, he'd averaged 9 shot attempts per game, and he just 1 of 5 from three. For Virginia to win this game, there's going to be so I told you to use all your wishes. Let's pile them up and use them all on defense so we can keep Jordan Minor out of foul trouble. You could probably need a couple of guys of those. What would that be? 5 I mentioned there. Rhodey, Minor, Buchanan, Dunn, and Groves. 5 guys. You're going to need 2 of those guys to step up and score points and help out Beekman and McNeely. One if one really goes off, and if both then Beekman and McNeely go off, but likely you're going to need some more weapons, and not just for this game, rest of the season. I mean, it's just what it is. This is the tough part right now. So, I mean, you can tell from my analysis there. I'm not very confident going into this game just because the matchup's not very good, and I just. This is a team that Virginia shouldn't match up, and I thought Virginia matched up pretty well with Virginia Tech, and that's what scares me. Virginia Tech wasn't playing good defense going into that game. They didn't get good games out of their guards, their 2 best players at guard, who score, their 2 leading scorers, Champadula and Hunter Couture, and still beat Virginia by 34 points. So this is a challenge, no doubt about it. Let me go into a column here that I wrote today. So I wrote the preview today, a couple of columns this week that are worth mentioning. I'll try to go through them quickly. Virginia is soft. In fact, I should go into that Virginia is soft column first because that sets up the one I wrote today. The soft comment actually was made by the 2 guys who were made available to the media after the Virginia Tech game. Both Isaac McNeely and Dante Harris, independent of each other, talked about how they thought their team, themselves, and then their teammates played that game soft. They used the word soft. Excuse me. And I did some math. I mean, this was I wasn't at the game. I wasn't at the post game. So when I'm writing my observations column, I'm doing that as all that's going on. And we ended up in the same place, me and then the 2 players, McNeely and Harris, and then Coach Bennett addressed a similar issue in his post game. All I did different was I gave some stats to kind of illustrate the points. The first one was in Virginia's 20 wins. Obviously, this is a team that's 20-7. The 7 losses have all been by double digits, and was really, I mean, the average margin of defeat's 21.3. And when you look at the numbers, I think I went over this on Tuesday in the podcast. The when a team got up big, they stayed up big, and so the quote from Tony Bennett one of the quotes I used in the column. I'll try to read this word for word. Quote, "They thoroughly outplayed us." And that's a tough way to go down. But when you look at it and you say, look, we were on a fine line, and if we're not right, separation can occur. That's happened to us this year a few times. You'd hope at this stage it wouldn't, but it did. And he's talking specifically about the Virginia Tech game, but he could be talking about any game that Virginia lost this season, those 7 losses. When I went back to the play-by-plays for each of those 7 losses, this took some time, as you can guess. The first 2 actually showed Virginia making a comeback from being down big early, but then running out of steam and then not making a second comeback. And that's the problem early in the season. Seemed like getting into too big of a hole, and then I mean, it's just like anything else when you're in a hole. I mean, physically, and if you're physically in a big hole and you dig yourself almost to the top and you run out of energy, you're gonna fall back down in a hole, and that's what happens to this Virginia team. The Wisconsin game, Virginia was down 11 midway through the first half. It was a 10-point game at halftime. Actually got back to a 5-point deficit. Had a little bit of a run in the second half, and then just like that, the Badgers put it on ice. Had an 11-0 run. Virginia went scoreless for a few possessions, and that game was over. Memphis, similarly, a 13-1 lead at the start of the game. First 4 minutes, 13-1. Virginia actually got it back to within 1 late in the first half, and it was still a 5-point game with 15:30 to go. But then Memphis went on a big run, and the game was over. The other big losses, Notre Dame was up 13-0 in the first 4 minutes. I mean, here we go. Virginia never got closer than 8, so never made it a game after that 13-0 deficit. Never got closer than 8. Virginia actually led NC State in what turned into a 16-point loss, and that was under the under 8 timeout. And then NC State went on a 20-9 run to close that half out. Um, got a big run in the second half and took that one over. Wake in the game down in Winston-Salem led 12-4, 8 minutes into the game. Virginia came back, tied it. Um, it was a 6-point game in favor of Wake at the break. The Demon Deacons scored the first 7 points in the second half. That game was over. And then Virginia Tech, it was a 16-14 lead for Tech at around the 10-minute mark of the first half. Virginia didn't score for almost 9 minutes. Tech went on a 20-0 run. Game was over. Um, didn't play with heart. That didn't play with a lot of hearts. What Dante Harris said. Uh, let's see. I thought we were pretty soft on both ends. McNeely said we didn't make them earn on defense, and then offensively we weren't screening, we weren't cutting well. A lot went wrong tonight. Um, there were two games that didn't go by the script. So I mentioned that Wisconsin game, Virginia briefly got back into it. Memphis game, Virginia got back within one, ran out of steam. The Northeastern game. Now, this Northeastern team, not a good team. 5-9 in the CAA, 10-17 overall. But if you remember that Northeastern game, it was so Wisconsin was back around Thanksgiving, before Thanksgiving. Northeastern was before Christmas, after the Christmas break. And this not very good CAA team, Northeastern, led 16-4, 8 minutes into the game. It was 37-24. Tony Bennett had to call timeout 2 minutes into the second half. Virginia didn't take its first lead of the game until the 7:01 mark at Isaac Benili 3. And that's saying a lot. This not a very good Northeastern team, but hey, forget the fact they're not very good in a sense. This Virginia team showed it could patiently chip away, chip away, chip away, and get back into a game. And I remember thinking after that night, hey, okay, this is not a very good Northeastern team that this happened to, but it was practice, Like, I'm a distance runner. I'm getting back into training. I want to do a marathon later this year. It's going to be months away. And so I'm not going to run the pace that I hope I run in November at the Richmond Marathon every day. In fact, right now I'm still running pretty slow. But there's minor victories along the way. Maybe one day you run. My goal is to run 8 minutes per mile in 10 months, 9 months, I guess, away now. Today I'm still running in the 10:30 area. So what if I run a couple of miles under 10 right now? That's a victory, right? So you don't have to be able to beat Duke and Carolina every time you go out there. You just have to beat the other team in the gym. And that night Virginia had just enough to beat Northeastern. And in that case, it was a learning experience. Hey, we can come back from a big deficit against the team. Hmm. Since then, Virginia's. I mean, there's one other incident. I got to be. Georgia Tech had an 11-point lead on Virginia the first half down in Atlanta, but it didn't last very long. And Virginia finished that first half on a 20-5 run, led the second half, most of the second half by double digits. So they came back, and when technically they were down 11, but they quickly turned that one around. So um, the Pitt game, Virginia lost that one by 11. It was a close game up until the last 7, 8 minutes. But that game, I remember, I mean, seeing it just live. There was a late in the game, 3 minute mark or so. Pitt made a little, like a offensive rebound layup or something like that, and the Virginia kids looked like they just the air went out of the five guys on the floor, just completely had nothing. And after the game, Tony Bennett actually said it looked like his kids quit. And then he tried to backtrack, but the word came out. The word quit came out. Can't take it back once it's out. Um, we kind of saw that in Blacksburg the other night. We kind of saw that there. Similar thing. And so, that then, okay, so soft. The word they used, the kids used, Tony used a lot of words around it. Soft. Where is Virginia's softest? It's in the post. I went over that when I went in through the Virginia Carolina preview. But the problem early in the season was that Tony Bennett decided that Jordan Minor wasn't ready to start, and he started Jake Groves at the 5 spot. Now, Groves is a really good stretch four. He's a 6'9" guy who shoots 49.4% from three. You can't ask for anything better from a 6'9" guy. He gets open shots and he makes half of them, and every one of them coming out of his hand looks like it's going to go in. But he's not a center. He's not. He's 6'9", 211. I'm a marathon runner. I'm 6'1", 203 today. So, um, he's 211. He's 9 inches, 8 inches taller than me and 8 pounds heavier than me. Him bodying up to uh the DJ kid at NC State, the idea of him bodying up to Baycott on Saturday, no, just not going to happen. And it's no offense to him, it's just reality. You're asking a really big guard to guard centers, and it just doesn't work. But uh in uh the loss to Wisconsin, the loss to Memphis, the near loss to a really bad West Virginia team, the near loss to a really bad Northeastern team, rebounding and defense in the post were the big issues. That got fixed when Miner was put in the lineup, and it's not like he's a savior or anything else, but the kid is he can battle in the post. He can score when he's in right position to do so. He can finish plays. And now, so Virginia lost, several games, trying to play without a center. The last three games, I would argue, with Miner's minutes in decline again, they're trying to play without a center. I mean, I think there's a commonality there. They were 11-5. Let's just be fair, 11-4 before Miner went in the starting lineup. Uh, I'll argue that the last three games he's been out of the lineup more than he's been in the lineup. So there was an 11-4 stretch, an 8-1 stretch in which Miner played a lot, 1-2 since he's not been playing a lot again. This is two teams. This is a 12-6 team when Jordan Miner is either a bench player who gets garbage time minutes or just a bench guy who gets a few minutes, and they're 8-1 when he plays a lot. And it's not, again, because Miner is a savior or the best player in the history of college basketball, but it's because he can play defense and he can keep his guys off the boards. And so, um, if he's not going to play a lot, that means Blake Buchanan does. It means Jake Groves does. Uh, I get a lot of emails from folks about the guys who transferred out this year. Caden Shedrick, Isaac Trout, Francisco Cafaro. I'll say his name correctly, not the way we said it for most of the 4.5 years he was here, 5 years he was here, but for the most part. Shedrick is not doing the job at Texas. He's had a season pretty much like his last two at Virginia, where in November and December he was really good, and then lost his starting job by mid-January. He did that this year at Texas. He's now averaging 7.8 points a game, but his last let's see, what is it? Last 11 games, he's averaging 11.7 minutes per game, 3.9 points and 1.6 rebounds. Very ineffective. And it almost confirms everything it confirms everything we wrote last spring after word emerged that he was thinking about leaving. And I don't want to kick a guy on his way out the door or after he's left the building, even though he had a lot of crybaby tears when he left here. And he's a talented kid who just can't get it all together, unfortunately for him. Trout is barely getting any run at Creighton, averaging 10.5 minutes a game, and he's only gotten double digits in minutes twice since January 1st. And we're talking we're almost out of February now. So Trout he made a move, but it's not working out for him there. And Cafaro is Cafaro. He went down a level. So at least, Shedrick's at Texas. That's going to be an NCAA tournament team. Trout is going to be sitting on the bench for an NCAA tournament team at Creighton. Cafaro is down at Santa Clara, which is in the West Coast Conference. That's Gonzaga's conference. It's not a conference that has a lot of depth in terms of talent. And Cafaro is averaging 4.4 points and 4.0 rebounds. That's pretty much what he does. He did that at Virginia in 1 year. That's just what he does. I point all this out to make the wider point that what we lost last year is not necessarily going to. It is not what wouldn't have necessarily been any better than what we already have this year, right? So, I mean, we lost three guys, got two guys in. Maybe just one more number would have been nice. Some deeper issues. Again, I went over this. It's all in the column. I'll link it on the website, Facebook page. Let's see where else. The YouTube description. It'll be in the podcast description. You can find it there. A lot of good stuff, I think. But recruiting is one issue for bigs. I know recruiting in football is a lot different than recruiting in basketball, vice versa. In football, if you're a state school, you want to recruit your state well. Virginia has a lot of good football and basketball players. But in basketball, you got 13 scholarships. You just find the best players, and if they're in the state, great. If not, you just find them. But there've been two really good bigs in Virginia that have gone to good schools that we missed out on. Armando Bacot from Richmond would be one. He got into Carolina. Carolina's not an easy school to get into, so no issues with, oh, he had to, we couldn't have recruited him. Um, and what's interesting about him, I've said this before, probably, I mean, I've said it a lot privately. I'm not sure if I've ever said it in a podcast, but he had to have been sold on come to Carolina. And if you go to Virginia, you'll just be setting screens and rebounding, and you'll do that for 4 years. And that won't be any fun. Come here, we'll let you score some points. And of course, he's done that. But the irony of that is guys with his size, which is about 6'10", he's 6'9" or 6'10". He's not the most athletic 6'9" or 6'10". He would have been better served going to Virginia and setting screens and playing defense and rebounding for 4 years. He might have been an NBA player. He's not going to be one now with what he didn't learn at Carolina. So that's life. The other guy from in-state is Mark Williams from Virginia Beach. He went to Duke for a couple of years, another school that's hard to get into. So again, we didn't get him because we didn't think we could recruit a guy like that and get him into school. Williams played 2 years at Duke, didn't do much there, and now he's in the NBA doing something. He's averaging 12.7 a game in Charlotte. And so just imagine one or both of those guys and setting our screens and finishing on pocket passes and running that middle screen action where maybe the ball actually does get in the post, giving Tony the option to maybe run some post plays. Imagine just one of those guys. We could have had that. Both those guys could have been here. Instead, we got what we got. The Virginia has done well in the past. It's been a while, but we've taken guys who weren't necessarily projected pro guys out of high school and made them pros who were bigs. Mike Scott. Mike Scott played a fifth. He played a post grad year before he came to college. Guys who played post grad, and then he played 5 years at Virginia because he had a medical redshirt year. He was 24, 25 years old. He went in the NBA and played for a while. Guys who play a post grad year of high school aren't on anybody's radar to play in the NBA, and he did for a while. Anthony Gill's another guy. Braxton Key, Monty Diakite, Jay Huff. All these are guys that, they weren't pros when they got to Virginia. They were pros when they left Virginia. But it's been a minute. Jay Huff's the last guy on that list. He's class of 2021. This is 2024 now. The bigs who followed, Jaden Gardner is his knock is that he's too small to be a big, but his game is big. He's a 6'6", 246-pound guy. At least that's what he's listed in terms of weight. He had two productive seasons. He led Virginia in scoring one year. He was second in the scoring in his second year. Double digits both years, and he's averaging 15.5 points a game in Belgium right now. So it's not like he's a productive guy. But other than that, we got Shedrick Trout Cafaro, who transferred out. There's one other guy that's worth mentioning who transferred out, Igor Milicic. Milicic, a 6'10 guy, played at Virginia for one season, 2021, 2022, averaged 6.3 minutes a game. He went to Charlotte. Charlotte is where Ron Sanchez, who's back at Virginia on Tony's staff, was still the head coach when he played there for 1 year, when Milicic played there for 1 year. Now Milicic in his second year, he's a junior at Charlotte, and he's averaging 13 points, 8.5 rebounds. He's shooting 36% from three. We could use that. That one. So everybody's still focused on Shedrick especially, but maybe Trout. Milicic is the one who got away. That's the guy who got away. But all right, so but I think there's a legitimate question needs to be asked about development or lack thereof of our bigs since Huff. Gardner had his limitations. He's a 6'6", 246-pound guy. He could not, he was not very good in ACC and Power 5 games around the rim. He had a little 12-foot jumper that was nice. He could make it a lot, but he could not score at the rim because he was too small to play in the post. You've got Shedrick, Trout, Cafaro have all left. Milicic left. They didn't develop while they were here. I mean, obviously, if they developed while they were here, they'd still be here. Um, and that's why Tony had to go out and find quick fixes. He got Ben Vanderplas last year, 1 year rental. This year's 1 year rentals are Minor and Groves. And I'll just say it: we all love Jason Williford, but he's the big man coach on the staff, and that position group has not done well the last 3 years. So where we are, and this will wrap up our podcast. Minor will get to start on Saturday. There's no doubt about that. He's got to. Um, he's the best option Tony's got to body up to Baycott in the post. And again, um, ask your friends to give us their wishes too. We need him to stay out of foul trouble. Um, uh, because what happens then if he gets foul trouble? The Louisville game that I mentioned earlier. I mean, all three of those guys, because Groves ended up with 2 fouls in the first half too. Uh, I'm making this suggestion. Anthony Robinson, 6'10" guy, came in. It was a late ad in the class of 2023 for Virginia in the recruiting class. Um, he came to my attention because okay, so at JPJ after games, I say, because this group, this small group of people who watch my podcast, listen to my podcast, um, whatever level of fame I've got amongst this group is what I've got. Um, and I say all the time, I don't go down post game. I let Scott German for AFP go down and monitor the post game interviews and such like that. I sit up on press row and work on my first couple of columns after the game, as waiting for traffic to die down. And what I love about so usually 10 minutes, 15 minutes after the game's over, some of the guys who are red shirts, like Christian Bliss, come out. Some guys who don't play, who haven't played much in a game, will come out and shoot jumpers. They'll have rebounders with them. They'll shoot jumpers. They'll have managers with them working. And Robinson's been coming out a lot of late, last few weeks. And first time I saw him, wow, that kid's got big. He came on grounds. He was 6'10", 220, and looked like his arms looked, he was straight down. No, there were no noticeable biceps or shoulders. He got some arms now. And what I see is he's listed now at 245. He's put on over 20 pounds. And so, okay, there's what, 4 regular season games left. There's at least one ACC tournament, one NCAA tournament. I think this team's going to play in the NCAA tournament. I don't think they're going to lose their last 4 games. That would, if a 1-3 or 0-4 finish, and then not winning the ACC tournament would be what would disqualify Virginia. I think 2-2 down the stretch. It'd be nice to win one in Washington in the ACC tournament if you go 2-2. But anyway, I say all that to say there's 4, 5, 6, or whatever games left in this season. The kid would be burning. We'd be asking the kid to burn a redshirt year for that game, for that few games. But here'd be my sales pitch if I'm Tony or Jason Williford or whoever making the sales pitch. All right, yeah, you're only getting a few games, but you're getting Duke, you're getting Carolina, you're getting the ACC tournament, you're getting the NCAA tournament. He wouldn't start. He would play 8 or 10 minutes a game. But it's needed. Right now, I don't want to count Jake Groves as my third center. I would never put him back. If I could have Robinson to give me 8 to 10 minutes a game at center, Groves would never have to play center again. That would make the team better. If all Robinson did was literally just set screens and rebound and give you 3 or 4 fouls, that's all you would need from him. If he gave you more than that, great. If he would end up pushing either Buchanan or even Minor for more minutes, better. And then think about what that could do for his development going into into the offseason and then into next season. He would have something tangible to look at for his development later on. So anyway, that's my pitch. It ain't gonna happen, but this team could use an infusion, and that's the only one we got. That's the only one we got there. So, all right. So Saturday at 4, Virginia, North Carolina. Game is on one of the ESPN family of network channels. I haven't looked it up to see. I will be quasi courtside. We'll be up in the middle of the late part of the upper the lower bowl in 107. Let's see. Game story. The game will end about 6. We'll have game story around 6:30, 6:45. More columns thereafter. Scott German will complain about something after the game, sure. Win or lose, he's going to complain about something. But yeah, there's a lot of covers coming. In fact, this is Thursday when I'm recording this, and you might be watching it Thursday or Friday. On Friday, I will have at least one more mailbag column. Got a great question from somebody about UVA and the guards and shooting. I will just use those key terms to tease what that mailbag column will be about. But it might be of interest. It was an interesting question posed to me. I composed a draft and sent an email back to the guy who asked the question. And yeah, there's some research I want to do on the what guys do as shooters at Virginia compared to what they did elsewhere. We'll see how, see what we find there. So anyway, but that will be coming tomorrow. And then Saturday, the game coverage. Sunday will be some more game coverage, and then we'll get you ready for next week. So, having questions for me, more mailbag type items, etc., feel free to email me at chris@augustafreepress.com.